welcome to the Catholic Nerds podcast, your primal source for quality Catholic nerdery. This is Scott.
Primal.
Colby told me to change the word each time, so doing this on the fly.
That works. Primal flies, animals. I'm Colby.
I am Primal Cody.
You can't get much more primal.
I'm Mary. And I'm here.
And we are the Catholic Nerds.
We are.
Most
sometimes.
So, Mary, before we hit the record button, Mary was telling us about a review she had read, a Catholic review of a not-so-Catholic book.
Yeah. So in fairness, I have not read the original book. I've just read this review of the book, but I thought it was really good. So the name of the book is Girl Wash Your Face, and I have heard a lot about, I've seen a lot of references to that book on social media and such. And basically the Catholic review, I think the title of the review was Girl Check Yourself, aimed at the author of Girl Wash Your Face. And basically the book is a self-help book, all about basically pursuing your dreams and your goals, for basically kind of coming to honestly say what your big dreams are. I think even including being the next Beyonce and stuff apparently is actually talked about as like a legitimate life goal to have.
So the subtitle, I'm just looking it up, Stop Believing the Lies About Who You Are So You Can Become Who You Were Meant to Be.
Yeah, who you were meant to be.
I am meant to be the next Beyonce. I just want everyone to know that.
We were all meant to be.
I am always Beyonce.
Yes. And that the author, I don't know if the author, within the context of the book, I think so, though, based on stuff the review said, that she's a Christian, she's the daughter of a Pentecostal pastor. So I think the book presents itself as somewhat Christian, although I think it's kind of like, I don't know, Oprah Christianity kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm just reading the blurb. This is Rachel Hollis. And she's the founder of the lifestyle website, thechicksite.com.
Okay. Cool. And so basically the reviewer had several significant concerns about the book. One of them being that she felt that the author of the book is very mean to overweight people. That she's basically saying you can't trust overweight people because they don't have any self-control. Yeah.
Wow.
That they're not to be trusted.
Though. I am overweight and I don't have self-control. But I guess it's not to be said for all people that are overweight. Just me.
Wait. The book is for women, Cody, not you. Don't worry about it.
That's right. It's only overweight women who are not to be trusted.
Boy,
I figure I don't have a lot of input here.
Boy, wash your face.
The guy's version would be Boy Wash Your Pits. How about that?
Oh, gross. My wife doesn't believe that word exists. Armpits, that word does not exist.
Well, that's because it's two words that meld into one. It's like a marriage.
It's underarms. The word armpits does not exist.
Interesting.
The arm and the pit, the two become one flesh.
Pits are inside peaches.
Interesting. I did not know that there were people out there objecting.
Or giant holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So basically talking about that she feels she's like, this may be a wound of mine, that she's like that I'm not particularly skinny, but that it just seems like this is kind of, kind of the opposite of that sort of, that on the one hand you have people who are like, no body shame whatsoever, it doesn't matter what size you are, you're perfect and beautiful, kind of ignoring the fact that no, there is a health aspect to being overweight, that that it's not as healthy or as good for you.
So she hasn't
lighter weight.
She hasn't gotten attacked for body shaming?
I don't know.
Because that seems swift and immediate.
Yeah, you would have thought justice would have been delivered swiftly.
Greenpeace knocks on your door and takes you out.
Right.
Within the Christian community, though, have you ever seen that?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, I guess you're right that like that would have been more, but I think this book is very universally popular.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not a relegated to the Christian community sort of thing.
Yeah. She said that also she plays really, how did she put it, like free and fast with scripture.
Yes.
That she's very good at like taking a scripture passage and kind of using it how she would like to use it, and the example
sort
she
of
gave.
a Joel Osteen approach.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the whole book kind of sounds like a bit of a Joel Osteen, but kind of more geared towards women, because to an extent women maybe, like, I don't want to paint with too broad of strokes, but like to an extent maybe women are more longing for I don't know, like to be seen and known, and not that men don't desire that on some level, but I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like Joel Osteen's more like financial success, right? To an extent.
Yeah. God will bless you with
Cody's
cash.
shaking his head. Yeah, like sow the seed and you will reap tenfold kind of thing. Anyway, but yeah, that it seemed like there are some concerns there, that, for instance, that she quoted the scripture where it says, I don't remember what the first half was. It was something about like, let every man have his wife and let the marriage bed be undefiled. And the way she interpreted that was that you can do anything in the marriage bed and it won't defile it.
Oh, that's not exactly it.
No,
Right.
Not quite.
And she was like, I don't know what kind of cognitive dissonance could let a person like interpret English words that way.
She might have been quoting from the Gospel of 40 Shades of Grey.
Precisely. So that, and then also mainly just the fact that the entire bent of the book is crushing your dreams and living sort of your best life, quote unquote, and that basically being whatever sort of idea of fame and self-fulfillment and whatever that you've come up with for yourself at all costs, doing whatever it takes, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and that she presents all these
boot
different...
on the neck of the man.
Right. And basically, like,
she encourages, entertains, and even kicks a little butt, all to convince you to do whatever it takes to get real and become the joyous, confident woman you were meant to be.
Precise. Oh wait, does it actually say that, or are you just...
This podcast brought to you by Girl Wash Your Face.
Well, and apparently every chapter, or I don't know if it's every chapter, but throughout the book she goes over like lies that we believe about ourselves, and that she thought, the reviewer of the book, I should probably find out her name so that I can give her credit. The reviewer of the book thought
Mary Rezak.
Mary Rezak? It's a good name, the first one. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the second one's good too. She assumed that at some point that basically it would be, here's the lie and here's what God says about you, but instead it was, here's the lie and here's how you overcome that lie by buckling down and being somebody different from, and she, that also the woman, the reviewer, Mary, was wondering, like, how does she, like, supposedly she's a mother, she's a this, she's a that, and within the book that the author says, like, people ask how I do it all, but honestly I don't. I rely very much on so-and-so who watches my kids while I'm doing my speaking engagements and tours and daily life, basically. And so the reviewer was like, I hope, I don't have kids yet, but when I have kids, if someone who has a full-time nanny tries to tell me how to live my best life, I'm going to laugh out loud. Hopefully not in their face, but I can't make any promises about that. So, like, also the fact that, like, what the woman is advocating for is basically, like, certainly not the cultivation of your family, not the cultivation of your marriage, even. It doesn't particularly sound like, or anything like that, or of what God has called you to be. Or the reviewer specifically says, like, that she never talks about, like, taking up your cross and following Christ, but rather, like, pursuing your dreams at all costs, no matter, I don't know if she says necessarily no matter the cost to other people, but certainly
make other people bear your cross.
Right.
No, okay, so that's a good point, and actually I guess a good segue to a point I want to make. and not to project this onto that book, but the health and wealth gospel, I think, is just taken off more than it ever has in the ever. If you go to YouTube and type in, type in the millennial missionaries, you will find a video that is a parody of this kind of mindset. Yeah,
is it that group that does a lot of them?
Yeah, but it's like, it's this couple. They travel the world, quote unquote, as missionaries to minister to the scuba instructors in Aruba, right?
Yeah.
Like, they basically live these glorified vacation style lives from the support of other people with the guise of mission work. And
I didn't know we could do that.
I know. I'm kind of rethinking everything.
Where do we?
We've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Right.
I know.
But it's this whole health and wealth gospel of, this new quote unquote like entrepreneurial type spirit where you can develop all these types of income so that you can do what you want to do under the guise of like serving or mission work,
right.
or and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I know a person actually that I grew up with, and she has a quote unquote ministry where she sells jewelry, and she does travel to other countries and does very good work, like helping other women, either get employment or like help, develop, these small communities so that they can, work for themselves. But it's like, where is the line of, generating profit in the name of ministry?
Right.
Because we bash, televangelists for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the line becomes a little more gray when you talk about selling a product, or when you're trying to quote unquote add value and help develop people who have less resource or whatnot.
You're kind of between the two extremes, the two poles. Well, one pole's pretty good, but you've got on one extreme you've got simony, right?
Yeah.
The selling of church offices, gifts, and then on the other side you have Paul, right, who was a tent maker. And so wherever he went, if he wasn't, supported with food and his missionary journeys, he could make tents and support himself that way.
But I guess to tie back to the conversation about the book is like this mindset of young people to work as little as possible, but to attain this dream, yet still have a life of, quote unquote, being Christ-centered, while totally ignoring the cross. Totally ignoring, I guess, what we talked about in the last episode of, shaking off this burden of life, and just kind of, I don't know, it's just weird. Like, as I've studied entrepreneurship, like, that seems to be a really big thing now. Like, people want to work as little as possible with the most gain.
Right.
Well,
I
yeah.
think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, you've got these, like YouTube stars. It seems to me like there's been a wave of them, and maybe an Instagram star. There were the YouTubers who, and I've got their names, they fell to their deaths at a waterfall in Canada.
Oh, no.
They, vloggers for High on Life and Extreme Travel Channel, Riker Gamble, Lexi, and Megan Scraper, they, and two of those, they're like boyfriend, girlfriend, one of those, two of the three, and they would video themselves doing extreme, going to extreme places, doing extreme jumps off cliffs, whatever, and they died doing that. Like the girl, it was in I think it's like, British Columbia. There was this kind of out of the way pool and waterfalls, and she kind of slipped into the current, and they jumped in after her, and they all died. And then you've got the Instagram girl. She was known. She was Asian, and she was known for going to extreme places again, but always posing in her bikini. So she died.
That's what I do.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Cody.
That's my dream.
Sorry.
Choosing your moment. Reading the room.
But she died.
Sorry.
She fell off. She would climb mountains in a bikini. That's what her shtick was, and she fell off she slid into an inaccessible portion of a mountain. People knew she was there, but couldn't get to her in time because she wasn't dressed properly. She died of exposure.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, it's just this surreal, living untethered to all sorts of different things.
Right.
Literally.
You also got those people that make money by playing video games and having people watch them play video games.
Well, I guess
talking about being tethered, right?
If no one was paying for it, then right, like to an extent, like it's kind of like the market's there.
Yeah, the market's there.
Just,
one of the new things, and even as we kind of tour YouTube, sometimes like when I want to show the kids my favorite 80s cartoons, like Gummy Bears or something like that.
Gummy Bears,
yeah.
bouncing here and there and everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
High adventure. Okay. Well, we'll stumble across all sorts of crazy things on YouTube, so we have to definitely keep that in check with the kids. But one of the things that Lucy loves is it's adults speaking with like child voices, playing with toys.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this kind of.
I've seen them.
Rose loves that too. It's kind of weird.
I mean, how more separated can you get from other people? And it's one thing to watch people play video games if you suck at video games like I do.
Scott's defending his watching people play video games right now.
I'm just gonna, why don't y'all play? I'm just gonna watch. But at least I'm in the same room,
I'm gonna live vicariously through.
Gotcha. So you're not paying to watch people play video games.
Yeah. Well, I'm paying in shame, but
Well, I pay for YouTube Premium, so I guess I'm part of that too.
So you got to watch Cobra Kai.
I have not watched it yet, no.
What is the point of YouTube Premium without watching Cobra Kai?
What's wrong with you?
No ads.
Oh, there's that, yeah.
There was also that Mortal Kombat movie that they did on there.
Oh, it had to have been better than the big screen.
The Mortal Kombat.
The one with David Carradine as Raiden. The only bright and shining moment of that movie.
Well, no, you're forgetting about the guy that played Shang Tsung.
I think we need like a buzzer to hit like when things get too nerdy.
Or a podcast to record.
Or off topic. Nope, get back.
What was our topic? Oh yeah, girl, wash your face.
Living your best life.
Girl, don't fall off a cliff.
Well, speaking of living your best life,
wait, there was something I was going to say about what Colby said about. I was going to say as far as what Colby said about like the fact that we're kind of that there are a lot of people doing ministry and expecting to be financially supported for their ministry, which I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing every time, but basically that and also like the idea that I guess basically that when I was in high school and college, the youth ministry that I was exposed to was largely I feel like the overarching message was to an extent kind of the message of girl wash your face to an extent, not quite, that's a little much, but like kind of like give the kind of devote yourself to God and he'll give you the desires of your heart kind of thing, like that
that seems true.
Yeah, that I don't feel like anything in our youth ministry prepared us for
life,
for crosses and for drudgery of, like kind of we were talking about in the last podcast, like working by the sweat of our brow, like to support our families and to take care of them, like that wasn't covered very much, and I feel like it kind of left us sort of unprepared, like kind of like high school not preparing you for doing your taxes, like
where do I sign a check?
Right. I don't know. That's something I've thought about before, is that it's just, it was all a lot of self-worth and our worth in God, and it's not like that message is not true. It's true, but like that isn't necessarily what we really need
to that
for life.
point.
No, good. You guys go.
So I was listening to, whether it be a mistake or not, but I listen to NPR a good bit. All
right, well, we're just going to have to stop this, right?
Clap. Safe word. So they were interviewing, there's this lady, Linda K. Klein, and she's a former evangelical Protestant. She grew up in the evangelical church, and now she's like leading the movement against the purity movement.
Whoa.
Okay.
Which is exactly as it sounds. But apparently, I think, well, Cody used to sell purity wear, so you probably have some good insight in this. But it seems like
you did.
I did.
Well, I didn't say it's a bad thing.
I know. Just this is a night of revelation.
Okay.
All the T-shirts and the rings and.
You were wheeling and dealing.
Speaking of making money,
right?
I used to work with Purity Wear, like TEE.
Mm-hmm.
They're a Christian clothing organization that also sold the purity rings and stuff. And I met her
they do
at
the
Abbey
Purity
Youth Fest, and I would help out at Abbey Youth Fest and
would they do the purity
sell
cards?
it on the side a little bit. I don't know if they did the cards.
Because what I was getting at is it seems like there's a Protestant take on the purity movement and a Catholic take on the purity movement. So what Klein, this lady Linda K. Klein, accuses the evangelical purity movement, she says, and I quote, it was all about how a woman needed to be a good Christian by protecting them, meaning men, from the threat that is you, the threat that is your body, the threat that is your sexuality.
I think there's some truth that in some cases there's some truth to that. Do y'all not think so? Like that there is sort of a...
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's told from a positive, not a negative perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
She has a new memoir. It's Pure, Inside the Evangelical Movement That Shamed a Generation of Young Women and How I Broke Free. Now, granted, shame, if we're speaking in terms of the Garden of Eden, shame is a healthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least the time before, pre-lapsarian, that shame entered the world.
Well, I think there's two different aspects of shame. One is the mechanism of protecting yourself, and then two is the imposition of someone else's misjudgment of you. So, as a former Protestant, right?
Right.
We never had any in-depth conversations regarding chastity or purity or anything.
Really?
Oh no! Like occasionally it was touched in youth group, but it was like a topic that just kind of floated.
Is that because you converted, like, at that time when you were Protestant and youth group, you were younger?
No, I went to a Protestant church up until I was almost 17 years old.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So, yeah, we stopped going to the Baptist church that we were going to when I was about 17. And then still we went periodically. However, it was around that time when I started hanging out with the Catholic youth group that invited me to go to the conference with them. But no, I would make a projection that in large, the Protestant community, the conversation, now it's gotten much better, as you can see, like either from this lady's book or, like there's different movements out there.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, at the time, the most popular book was I Kiss Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was like the pinnacle of Christian Protestant chastity conversation when I was in youth group.
That's true, yeah.
Now there are other resources, but that was the book that people kind of pointed at.
Yeah.
And there are very good things about that book. However, like the specific conversations of what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? It's lacking big time. And actually that's one of the biggest points of my conversion is the chastity conversation. I was 17 years old and one of my aunts had went to, Theology of the Body class with Christopher West, and she brought back a handful of CD sets and whatnot, and it was my prurient interest that led me to listen to those CDs. Like literally it was my twisted sense of my sexual desires that, like, wow, here's a conversation about sexuality that I've never had with my parents, I've never had with my friends. I want to learn. I'm going to go find it where I can get it.
Like basically the reverse of that happened for like most kids growing up in the 60s and 70s, like the Wonder Years kids. There's the episode where Kevin Arnold and his friends steal a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves or something from the bookstore, and that that they learned. I think a lot of kids from the previous generations learned in just terrible ways about sexuality.
Right. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but there was a Protestant guy on YouTube. He had, he's got his own ministry, and he got a lot of popularity because he started having like Q&A sessions on sexual topics. And so, the conversation is being had more today than it was in the past, which is a good thing. However, again, without the real anthropology behind it or the real theology behind it, it's reaching. It's not quite touching the prize,
So is the Protestant equivalent of theology of the body just, we're going to take certain scriptures, not necessarily that robust teaching from the Garden of Eden that we get from, through JP2 and the Catholic tradition, but it's just like, quoting the sins, and there's no philosophy added to it?
Well, I would say actually that's one of the biggest kickers between Protestant and Catholic perspectives on these things is, and I'm making a very blanket and general statement, there are no substantial Protestant philosophers or theologians that have written, and have like recognized works that are long-standing, right? So you have different ones. I mean, you have Calvin, you have you have different people that have different writings, but when it comes to actual like reputable like academic perspectives on these things, how many can you quote?
Yeah, there's like Barth, and that's about it.
Right. So when it comes to like modern anthropological questions, they're not there. That's why
does a lot of that have to do with like within Protestantism the fact that anthropology is basically like, yeah, we suck, humanity.
Well, yeah, no, sure,
we're the worst.
No, yeah, and it ties to that too, because when conversations about science, conversations about all those topics, I mean, if you only lean on sola scriptura or things that you can explicitly read in scripture, those questions aren't answered there. At least to the degree that people want them to be.
And that is what Karl Barth said. He said that the incarnation was like a rose falling into a bomb crater. So obviously that doesn't jive too well with the Immaculate Conception, first off, but just the intrinsic goodness of the human person anthropologically, because he's made in the image, he and she are made in the image and likeness of God.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and actually, I mean, there is some, I don't say remorse, but like it is difficult to say, to say those statements in black and white, like as they come out of my mouth, because I still have family that are Protestant. And so it is difficult to like make statements that are, discrediting, dismeriting, or, placing ignorance on someone's spirituality. However, growing up, we always had, the pastor would preach these sermons speaking very negatively against the Catholic Church. And never once did we ever actually, either read the catechism or like pull excerpts from different readings of the saints or anything like that. And so once we started studying history for ourselves, it was like a totally different conversation. And it was like the light switch was just kind of flipped on, because like all these major life questions that either A, I did have, or B, I didn't know that I had until someone presented it to me, life started to make sense. And so like I said, the big question is, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What is man? Period. Right? Those are big questions.
Yeah.
And unless you can like have a substantial conversation around it, or someone that can give you, some general direction as to how to navigate that, it's not easy. I remember actually one of the biggest pivotal moments, I think, for my mom was the pastor of the church we were attending. Like, she asked him, like, well, if the Lord called you, like if you, through revelation, the Lord called you to, to become Catholic, would you do it? And his response was, I do not ever believe that the Lord would call me to do that. And so, no, I would not do that. And so, like, a willing, and I guess it's kind of a, different conversation where we started from, but like a willing ignorance, that's not the aspect of a spiritual leader that you want to follow.
Yeah, I mean, if the Lord revealed to someone to do something, like, if the Lord revealed to me to, like, and like, actually revealed to me, like, not me going crazy, like, to become a Protestant, I mean, like, that this is where the church lies, then, right. Yeah, okay, that's where I need to go.
Yeah, you gotta follow that path.
He's probably thinking of it as, like, if we said, like, well, what if the Lord told you to kill your wife? He's like, well, then I'd have to go check myself into a mental institution because that's a problem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Different question.
Just that he's probably thinking, like, well, that's not in keeping with what I know of God, so therefore it must not be God.
Right. But I guess to tie back to our original conversation, in regards to chastity or sexuality, is like, I think a lot of Protestant young people today, because of the generation of pastors that they've had that have either A, not addressed those questions, or B, not addressed those questions well, they're starting to grab at whatever they can and starting to make their own way. Right. Without any real direction or any substantial direction. And so, even though they're good intentions, without good direction or any good formation, underlying that's where we make mistakes. But again, I guess that's our duty to step up as Catholics to offer them the truth of what we do have in charitable and generous ways. Because these are easy conversations. Once you get to the real meat of the question, right? Everybody wants to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. It's just, how do you get to it? Yeah, and so I think, a lot of young Protestant people, like, these very audacious ways that people are trying to either get attention or try to get their message out is because, really, to get that attention, you have to be kind of bold, Like, if, your parents weren't bringing up those questions for you or showing you, then you just got to make it and do it for yourself.
And actually, it seems like one of the biggest, just from what you just said about your parents, one of the biggest draws to chastity, I feel like, would be, like, for young people, would be look at your family, look how wonderful it is. Do you want something like that one day? Like this is part of how you prepare for that. But how many kids that are being talked to can look to their families and be like, oh yes, I want that. I want what my parents have. I want what my siblings, what me and my siblings have. I want that to be what my children have one day, and that's kind of what Cody and I pray for, is that our kids, we've talked about, like, the only hope really of our kids following in our footsteps is if they look to us and see joy, if they see something that they want for the rest of their lives within their life, and they're like, I guess our parents might be onto something with this whole faith thing and whole,
We're gonna embarrass them so hard. Sorry.
I don't know, that's part of what's lacking in chastity education today, is the fact that we're lacking in good family models.
Yeah, chastity
education is kind of ridiculous because it's always keep it in your pants.
Yeah, it's the negative, not the positive.
Like it's well, even the Braveheart talk. Like, every time you go to a retreat, there's the guys talk and the girls talk, and the guys talk is always Braveheart or keep it in your pants.
Yeah.
Or both.
Whereas the girls talk is normally kind of like the girl wash your face thing, like you are worth it and you are powerful, you are a woman, here you roar.
You're a beautiful princess warrior.
You tell them, sister.
Yeah. And I really think, I'm sorry, Scott, you
no.
Well, and I was going to let me finish that thought real quick, is those talks are all good, they're great, but you just hear them too many times. It's like it's like you hear the same thing over and over again, and it just becomes like, well, I guess that is the truth. We are bad. Like, for guys, like, we are bad. We need to, just control every one of our desires, and we need to be caged.
Right, and
it's just kind of ridiculous. And there's no talks about actual masculinity.
Yeah, and going back to that negative versus positive thing, yeah, we know pornography is bad. Yeah, we know premarital sex is bad. But it's not just running away from something, it's running toward something else. Right? And you can't just grin and bear that, just by sheer force of will, a lot of these very real issues. You've got to give somebody something to run to.
Right. So actually, one of the things I always use when I used to do chastity sessions is you have to find motivators, right? So if you identify motivators with the work that goes with that, it's so much easier to make those decisions. So like when you talk about business, right? Or when you talk about being an athlete, or when you talk about any goal, you have to put the work in between connected to the goal. And so I always ask people, ask them the question, how many of you want a happy, healthy marriage? Raise your hand. Most of the time, everybody raise their hand. How many of you are, willing to do what it takes to have a happy and healthy marriage, right? Mm-hmm. When you ask it in that way, people are like, oh yeah, sure. So they raise their hand. So then you start asking the hard questions, right? Okay, well, how many of you are willing to not do this? How many of you are willing to do this, right? The yeses that you gave in those first two questions encompass all of this other arduous task that most people just they shy away from. But if you actually make the connection between the motivation and the prize with the work does not seem so difficult.
And look at the philosophical underpinnings there, right? We're speaking teleologically, right? The end in mind, the virtue that takes to achieve that end. When on the reverse side, like what Linda K. Klein is saying, they're telling us, she says this purity movement is telling us to live a sexless life, right? And then they kind of get into identity politics that you cannot repress my sexuality, that is my identity, those sorts of things. It's a completely different way of looking at things.
Right.
Which actually, that statement has a bit of truth in it, right? You can't repress my sexuality because it's part of who I am. That statement has a little bit of truth in it. However, when you confuse, sex as
and sexuality,
right? Sex as a verb versus sex as who, as a noun. That's the distinction there.
Right. Two things. Now I'm not going to be able to remember the two things now that I've declared there's two of them.
Might as well say three things.
Well, one of them being that I feel like something that I've noticed is that, I don't know if this is across the board with youth ministry, but that with the tremendous focus on like being patient, waiting for your spouse, and like vocational discernment, and some chastity talks, that there can kind of be an undercurrent of like, just wait, sex is coming. It's coming. And that it's kind of like someone being on a diet while constantly like hanging out in an ice cream shop or something, like basically that we need to be talking to young people about other things, and not that we're not at all, but like leading fulfilling full lives that have joy and have goals other than finding their spouse. Because I feel like there's a tremendous focus, at least for a lot of like college age ministry, of like, oh, he's out there, just you wait, and that to an extent that kind of keeps your mind somewhat, you know what I'm saying, like I don't know, I'm not trying to say like just to replace the desire for sex with something else, but that if what we're talking about all the time is chastity and is vocational discernment and is looking for your spouse or waiting for your spouse, that it's kind of natural that then we're kind of making it hard not to think about those things.
That's true.
And secondly, dang it, what was the second thing?
Here, I've got something while you're thinking of that. I was listening to a high school teacher that teaches Aristotle, right, to his high schoolers, and
nice.
He basically frames the class in terms, and it's an all boys school, teaching the boys about virtue and what Aristotle has to say about virtue, which is not something you typically learn in school, or like the Alistair MacIntyre, that the philosopher Alistair MacIntyre wrote the book After Virtue. Like, we're living in a society that that's not the vocabulary, that's not the framework that we're used to anymore, which is scary.
That's true. Also, the second thing was that basically that, along with what Colby was saying about like kind of talking to kids about like the goal, of having a family and having a relationship, maybe like your parents or like other marriages that you see, which I think part of what's difficult for a lot of people is that kind of that thing of that we're not very good at being good to our future selves, that a lot of times we're not eating the way that our future selves would have us eat, or exercising the way our future selves would like us to exercise, or saving money, but that, to me, part of the argument for chastity, which is maybe a little difficult to convey to like high school students, but I think it's possible, is that we're called to love everyone on earth, like to convey Christ's love to everybody. And once you've crossed certain lines with people, the best way to love them a lot of times is to avoid them after. You know what I'm saying? Like once you've broken up.
Yeah.
And that particularly, like, kind of what made that concrete to me personally was the fact that what a lot of people might not know that are listening to this podcast is that Cody here used to date Scott's wife.
Do what?
And
obviously this is before any of us were married.
That is
this was
scandalous.
Before
our downloads just went through the roof.
Yeah.
Drama on the Catholic Nurse Podcast.
Please let that be the title.
Many moons ago. But that to me, is Ashton there right now?
No, I think she's...
she wandered off.
She's now in a semi-unconscious state.
Excellent. Good for her. Would that we all. But basically that I felt for some time, because Cody and I so enjoy the friendship of Scott and Ashton, and we like to think that they enjoy ours sometimes.
Definitely.
Maybe.
All the time.
And all the time. And basically that I feel like Cody and Ashton basically gave us a gift through their chastity, that they made it possible for us to now be friends in a way that I don't think would have been possible otherwise, if that makes sense. Like, with any amount of more physicality, it wouldn't have been possible to maintain a friendship, certainly with like our spouses and everything. It would have been awkward. And so basically the chastity makes possible the ability to go on having relationships with people after the romantic relationship has ended, and to go on having to be able to love them like very actively as Christ loves them, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
No,
that's such a cool perspective. Ultimately, it's definitely more about Ashton than it was about me, because I came from a background in college where I didn't have very good boundaries. I was not very chaste, and then coming to date / court Ashton was a revelation, because because she had made a promise when she was a girl, a young I don't know, Cody might know, but that she would not even kiss a man until the altar. So
yeah,
Ashton and our first kiss was after the priest had said, "You may now kiss the bride." I'm not sure if he actually said that, but after that moment, which that was just such a great way to start a relationship. Not to mention our friendships.
Right, which I wasn't going to be as specific, but now that you've been, I can be. That like I feel like that in particular is part of what makes it so possible for us to be friends, is the fact that, like, not that if Cody and Ashton had kissed it would be impossible for us to be friends, but like they had such a high standard for their chastity that, you know, that now it's possible for us to hang out and be cool.
So let's just
Cody's like, never mind, it's not cool.
No. Because I have to give credit where credit is due, because Ashton called me to that standard, right? Like, I was coming from a background of, well, let's just say none of that existed. So, like,
there are people we're not friends with.
Being a baby Catholic at the time, it was good to have somebody that called me to that level of chastity at that time, allowing me to better know who I was as a Catholic man. So, given the credit where the credit is due, so that people listening don't think that I'm just this amazing guy that is, like, perfect for every woman. So
it's a shame that she's not listening.
Oh, she will be.
Like,
she'll hear it. She'll hear it later.
We're all like, Ashton's amazing.
It's
changed all our lives.
Well, this is such a contrast between Ashton and Linda K. Klein, right? Because
Ashton is the anti-Lindy, or Linda K. Klein is the anti-Ashton.
The anti-Klein, yeah. Yeah. Because she's, you know, Klein's like resentful that she and women in general should be made to bear the burden of purity, right? And that's the negative way of thinking about it. But Ashton and her saintliness brought not just me, but Cody, or not just Cody, but me, to a whole new standard and level of purity. Because of the force and power of womanhood.
Right.
Not because you have to repress womanhood.
Right. When I said before that I thought there was some truth to it, I hope I didn't seem like I was saying...
Oh, no. Every heresy has, an element of truth.
It just... I think some women are made to feel like they're the... I know of one case where, like, a man kept making inappropriate jokes in front of women. And... Not, like, I say inappropriate jokes. Like, mildly inappropriate jokes, and the women were like politely chuckling, and they were asked to like leave the social situation because they were making it awkward by laughing at his jokes. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing where like women are held to maybe, which isn't to say that, hey, if they hadn't laughed, that might have been like a great, you know what I'm saying? Like, sure, it might have been holier if they hadn't laughed, but they also probably shouldn't have been made to feel like the problem either,
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I'm
over here with my feminist my feminist banner over here, advocating for the rights of women everywhere to laugh at inappropriate jokes.
Well, and
that was a joke, guys.
Oh, see, you got to tell us these things.
You should be.
I know, right?
So another figure in, I'm not going to say the feminist sphere, but we were talking about
feminist sphere.
And that's a great word.
The femisphere.
The femisphere.
The femisphere.
Feminist sphere. Just drop
Y'all
the
are
T.
afraid of it?
No?
That's a joke, like the feminist sphere.
Like Michael Crichton's The Sphere. That's I'm dating myself.
Yeah, you missed us.
God bless it.
You shot and it just went whoo.
Well, anyway, we were talking about
a shortcoming on our part.
Yeah, please go read every Michael Crichton book ever. But we were talking about Marie Kondo.
Wait, I know that name. Sorry.
Oh God, he wrote Jurassic Park. I mean, come on, people.
That's why I know the name. I read Jurassic Park.
And he's written a lot of books since that, well, maybe you shouldn't read, but he had a really good start. He actually wrote the screenplay for Westworld, the original Westworld, like with Yul Brynner as the cowboy all in black and 4 feet tall or half feet tall. But anyway, we were gonna mention Marie Kondo. Ashton and I we watched a couple episodes. It's Marie Kondo, The Art of Tidying Up, I think. If somebody can correct me, that'd be awesome. But she has a new show on Netflix, and she basically takes families of every stripe, some family dynamics that really we didn't feel like watching. But she takes.
Wonder what that could be.
Yeah, gotta check every box when we talk about.
Must be old people.
Yeah, like myself. So she took families that were more or less in crisis because their stuff was suffocating them in their homes. Not talking about hoarders, but just like the ratcheting up of stress in a home because of untidiness. And Marie Kondo has a way of like telling. She gets each family member, to take all their clothes and put on their bed. So they can see like the sheer tonnage of clothes that you've accumulated and that you just don't need. And she, when she goes into a house, she kind of has like a meditation. And I don't know if she's Buddhist or Shinto, and I can't really say I know if there's a clear line between the two. But she also, when going through things that we want to get rid of, you hold the clothes or hold the object and you ask yourself, does this object spark joy in you? And I think there's a lot of meat here on the Catholic bone to talk about, objects. Are we anthropomorphizing? Are we personifying objects? Which is like the flip side of theology of the body. The Shinto aspects of this. Basically, she's. My understanding of Shintoism is that there's like a spirit for everything. There's the house spirits, kind of like in Roman mythology. You had Hestia and Vestia, the goddess of the hearth. Roman mythology was much more. There's a little demigod for every little thing in the household. So you see aspects of that creeping in, which, if it were a Christian going into a house and asking for God's blessing on that house, can you imagine the fury that would be unleashed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But do y'all have any thoughts on that?
I have such mixed feelings. Because I do think like decluttering is so important, and I'm so bad at it.
My mixed feelings are I don't watch HGTV, so
this is Netflix.
It's not on HGTV. It's Netflix, which
enough.
We don't watch Netflix.
We don't watch Netflix. We gave that up because
that's a good story.
For a moment.
That's a good story in itself.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Colby.
I'll say a little bit different perspective, but a book I read and have been reading is called Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was going to be Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy.
Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people put them together because a lot of people that read his book have also probably read hers, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But in her book, they do. You evaluate your purchases, you evaluate your stuff, but she uses the perspective of life energy.
Oh boy.
But it's not like a spiritualized, like pantheistic kind of thing. It's the effort that you put into your life, your work, right, your job or whatever. How much of your life energy do you spend to attain stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Or to maintain it, probably.
Or to maintain it, right. So they put it in perspective of like, you figure out what your actual net income is, not what your gross income is. So like, after your expenses for travel and commuting and your groceries, like your actual savings rate. And then you apply that to your frivolous purchases or your non-discretionary purchases. And how much of your quote-unquote life energy do you spend to attain that stuff? Right? And so when you put it in that perspective, they're like, okay, well, this t-shirt, right? You talk about clothes. Well, if I have this much clothes and my actual earnings rate is, say, $2 an hour, because a lot of people, you make $20, $30 an hour in your job, but when you actually deduct your actual living expenses and other stuff, your quote-unquote savings rate, you might make $2, $3, right?
Oh, that's kind of frightening.
Yeah, and that's actually being conservative. A lot of people are in debt because they actually overspend, right?
Right.
But she uses the conversation of how much quote-unquote life energy do you spend attaining stuff, and does that bring you fulfillment, or is it draining you?
Right.
Right. So is that purchase actually worth it to you, and does it enrich your life, or does it give you a spark of joy, or is it a drain or a burden or a negative consequence that you need to get rid of or not do? So it's a little bit different, but it's a similar conversation.
Right. It's kind of like also like people addicted to food somewhat, in that like I know a lot of people, myself included, I shouldn't be talking as though this is like vague. Other
well,
people
to a certain extent, we're
like
all addicted to food.
Right. Right. But also, like, acquiring something new can kind of give a brief rush. Like, here's this neat new thing.
Yeah, that triggers a dopamine pathway.
Right. But that the long-term consequence is, now I need to make room for this. I need to keep it clean. I need to store it somewhere, and that oftentimes we're not prepared to keep in mind the long, kind of that thing of being kind to our future self, that we're not prepared to expend the energy needed for whatever the thing is.
Yeah, future self, you don't need that boat.
Shameless plug for our last episode where we talked about abortion and the instant gratification of our carnal pleasures, and people don't consider the future and the consequence and the things that come from that, right?
And so they destroy half of humanity.
Right. Because it's the easy way to do it. Just wait for a flood to take all your possessions away and start over again. Yeah. I think that there is just as we had the Benedict option and then the Mary option and then the beer option, I think that there could be, I feel like we're just waiting for the Catholic art of tidying up. You have a Franciscan or a Trappist monk, write about how he keeps his cell neat. But I feel like
by not owning any.
Well, it's funny. You say that and you joke about it, but the minimalist movement is a big thing now.
Yeah, we were
there
doing
are
that
a lot
before it was cool.
Right. I mean, but there are a lot of secularists who are trying to discover themselves, who are studying monks, who are studying, these different religious sects, to figure out, what is it about them that ticks, right, that makes them happy? Like, why are they happy with nothing? Mm-hmm. What is it about that?
Yeah.
So even within the secular community,
ahead,
people are talking about it.
I feel like I know a lot of stay-at-home moms that I've become closer to in the last year or so. That could be that Catholic Marie Kondo, that are doing it right, that know how to, and aren't just doing it for themselves too. They're doing it for their whole family, knowing how to sort of keep everyone happy and within, living in a space that's healthy and happy and not drowning in stuff. And and it's hard.
And teaching how to order these things to the corporal works of mercy. We're not just trashing our goods. Maybe we don't acquire things in the first place that we can live simply so that others may simply live. But on the other side, if we do have excess things, teaching the kids to pick out toys for St. Vincent de Paul, ordering all those things to the good of others.
Yeah. I told a friend, so disclaimer, we were actually going through the kids' toys yesterday, trying to figure out, we're okay, something's got to go. And the way our lives have worked out is that we have a child's birthday in December. Christmas then comes in December, as it does for many others. And then our next child's birthday is in February. So we've got this one time a year where we're inundated with stuff and toys and stuff, which is lovely. Thank you, people, for giving our children
swimming
toys.
through a sea of toys.
Right. And so I was texting a friend who has 7 kids and asking her, how do you do it? And she was giving me some tips. And I was I just feel like if I take any toys away from my kids, that I'm potentially robbing them of this chance to make some great realization with this toy, or to play with it in a new way or something. And she told me, she texted me, she said, no, you're giving them so much more. You're giving them the gift of order and beauty and gratitude and responsibility and creativity by teaching them how to like make do with less and how to, and I just thought that was kind of beautiful. Maybe it's just my
it's absolutely
my momness
true.
now. Yeah. Just that we're teaching our kids to be holy, like even by taking toys away from them or giving their toys away.
And I was struck when Marie Kondo, in one of the episodes, she was showing how she organized her child's toys, and she had like 5 toys around her.
Oh, good.
And I was like, well, okay, that's how you organize those 5, but what about the other 500? But no, that was it. Her child had whittled it down to 5 toys. And I was like,
what were the 5 toys?
It was like a doll.
I guess I can text you about this later. I'm just curious.
I don't even. I mean, they're just basic toys, like an Amish child would have.
Right.
I play with more of their toys than 5.
I still have more of my toys from my childhood. Like I've got my whole Ninja Turtles set. Like I'm not getting rid of that because that sparks joy.
I never particularly liked. I'm gonna bring on some wrath from you guys and the viewership.
Yeah, nerds are gonna hate her all the time.
I never could really get into the Brave Little Toaster or Toy Story because I felt like already I found it hard as a kid to like let go of things. I was easily attached to physical things, very sentimental, and it's like, well, great, now they're also personified and have personalities and are hurt inside if I throw them away. I was just always like, why? Don't get me wrong, I know they're very entertaining, but to me I was always like, why are we sending the message to our kids that these toys have feelings?
Yeah, if we get rid of our toys, they'll go to that creepy neighbor kid who's going to make them into little toy monsters.
Who's going to torture them.
And put dynamite on them.
Yeah. That's the other thing.
I was that kid, actually.
Oh, okay.
Oh, were you?
I was not sick.
Mary hates that kid.
In Disney movies all the time, and I love a lot of Disney movies.
I hear a future podcast coming up.
Right? They personify things all the time, animals and objects. Right. And then horribly mutilate them dismember them or kill them. And to me, I'm just sitting there like, I thought that this was just put on par with like for the sake of viewing, for the sake of this movie experience, we were thinking of these things like people, and you just violently killed them in front of us. Like, I'm traumatized. Like, is anybody, I just feel like for kids, it's like, we're like, oh, it was just a little plastic soldier. Oh, wait, but like for the kid, it was a person. I don't know. So we don't think about how traumatizing it is.
But yeah, obfuscate, confuse the line between object and person. That seems like a perfect way to ruin a child.
Basically. In short.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still suffering the consequences.
Yeah.
20 years
later.
We're
only... I honestly thought Mary was about to say she doesn't like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, well, that, I mean...
And her and Scott were going to go back and forth.
I mean, everybody likes that, so, I mean, we don't even have to... No, I thought...
Word.
I've got one on my shelf right now.
Of course. I thought I was... what Mary was saying, I was thinking, well, we're both only kids, so our toys were our friends, because... we had no one else.
Right.
But you probably did have friends. It was probably me that did.
Well, it's not that I didn't have friends, but like at home, like in other words, you're playing more with toys during the time you have at home than you are with your siblings,
Yeah.
And also as an only child, you're with, how do I put this? With a family. Let's say you have a toy that's for like kids that are 3 years old. That's not one kid's toy. As the kids get older, that becomes the next kid's toy, the next kid's toy. But as an only child, it's like that is your museum of your
Why are you touching my toy? Who said you could touch it?
Right.
It's meant in the box.
Like, your mother is like, oh no, we can't get rid of that because that's those toys that Mary played with for 2 seconds when she was 2, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Scott, were you that kid that collected everything and never opened it?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, man. I'm sorry.
Not much has changed, really.
I used to pick on it.
Not much has changed.
I still...
You used to pick on it.
Yeah, it hasn't. No, I still have my Admiral Akbar mint on card. Love it.
Oh my gosh.
Love Admiral Akbar.
Could you is that worth money?
Yeah,
Probably.
but not a huge amount.
Would you ever sell it?
Yeah, I could sell it. Well, maybe not Admiral Akbar.
That's what I was figuring.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. I could definitely sell my Luke Hoth in Hoth fatigues. Now,
clearly,
maybe all my duplicates of my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Maybe I could sell them.
Man,
I'm mostly kidding.
mostly kidding. Oh no, it's like Pokemon, right?
What a lame thing.
speak not to Cody of Pokemon cards.
I know, but like I did the same. I made the same mistake. So like I had the full binder. I had every original card except for a Charizard.
Which I had.
I mean, literally every single original card except that one, and I had it in a binder, and the binder sat in my closet for years. And eventually I got tired of it, and in my decluttering state, right, I put it on my bed, and I said goodbye to my binder of Pokemon cards. As it went on eBay, it went on eBay for $14.
Oh, bad move, Sparky.
The entire thing, $14.
Dude.
And then Pokemon Go comes out.
Oh.
And that same binder I saw sell on eBay for close to $5,000.
Good God.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, this is not helping me get rid of things.
You just
Yeah, I lost mine a lot earlier on. Someone stole mine.
That's why I was saying speak not to.
Yeah, I had the original Charizard holographic.
Dang.
I had Zapdos, Blastoise,
Mhm.
Venusaur. I had all like the rare ones. It was
had original holographic Mewtwo.
You
I
see,
remember I had that. I had like 1,000 cards basically, and someone stole them all. And I'm assuming they sold them for drugs.
Dang.
well, at least it went to a good purpose.
Oh yeah, good cause.
See, this isn't fair because, I mean, well, in the worst way, it's not fair from my perspective because when I was a kid, baseball cards turned to crap, right? Because this was the early 90s, right? The era of mass-producing baseball cards. Comics were mass-produced. There was a new number one. There's like 40 new number ones at all times. So comics from that period are worthless. The other cards we had were the Marvel, like the X-Men trading cards, which are completely worthless. And I mean, even like our Cabbage Patch, or like the Garbage Pail Kids, we had cards. You know, it's like the evil Cabbage Patch Kids had a counterpart called the Garbage Pail Kids. They're like nasty. Even those things, like all the collecting cards from our period, because that was like the collecting time, are worthless.
The opposite, the anti-Marie Kondo
Yes.
time. The time of accumulating as much as possible.
What do y'all remember Pong?
Yes.
Like those little circular things that were supposed to be like the people were going to be collecting those for hundreds of years, or at least
Beanie Babies.
Yeah, Beanie. Oh my God, there's so much terrible consumer collectibles in those.
The only thing that's really survived the test of time is Pokemon.
Which I want us to go back and put this with Cody's account of his cards being stolen. I want us to lay this over while he's talking.
This isn't the Shirley Q. Liquor version, is it?
I don't know what
it's probably best. That's that you don't know what that
Okay, good.
It's a Shirley Q liquor, yep.
is. Oh God.
I was trying to pull that up while he was talking about it, but I wasn't fast enough. Just felt it was appropriate.
Wow. Thanks.
Sorry,
love.
I do feel your pain.
She loves
Thank
me
you.
so much.
I
Don't
love you.
Can't you tell?
There's clearly room for two people on that door, but regardless.
Clearly.
So I
But
guess
she would have kept me off the door. That's how much she loves me.
Oh, ouch.
Well, I'll hold your hand forever, Jack.
Oh wait, not
Oh
so
wait, you're
much.
frozen. I'll let it go.
Jack. Jack.
Yeah, Frozen being a whole nother movie. And maybe a topic for next time.
Well, Jack ended up in another movie too. So
So lots of movies. What
have
is?
you all seen Jack Returns? The YouTube trailer?
No.
no, I
Yeah.
haven't.
Go to YouTube. Type in Jack Returns.
Word. That's our word of advice for the week.
Go to YouTube.
Oh, we've been
Also, the
that's been a-
Millennial Missionaries. I thought you were going to say reference Howard Hughes, like when Leonardo went to portrayed Howard Hughes in You know,
The Aviator.
yeah, peeing in a jar.
Well,
I made it about 2/3 of the way through that movie, and then I had to stop. I was like, I can't deal.
When he died in Titanic, didn't he wash up on the beach in Inception?
Yes.
No, I think that's what I think
Oh.
he washed up into a bear's mouth or something in that other movie.
The Revenant.
Yeah, that one.
But no, like, yeah, Jack is the guy from Inception. So, yeah.
Wait. So
It's kind of like Captain America,
Don't-
you know? He
don't
was
question
frozen.
is
He
this
was frozen at the
Yeah,
bottom of the
exactly.
ocean, and he came back.
and Bucky?
There was back in 1997 when it came out, there was an article, like I don't know, not quite a satire, but an article like Titanic 2, you know, and Jack like surfaces and Rose is like, but I thought you died, and he's like, well, my protective layer of hair gel saved me. That just stands out to
my
me
Brill
tremendously.
cream. Yeah, save me.
Well,
Yeah.
the description on YouTube, so the actual title is Titanic 2, Jack's Back. But
He's
the description
Like a
says,
horror movie.
the description says, I thought the old lady dropped it in the ocean in the end. Well, baby, I went down and got it for you.
Yikes.
Oh,
So
God.
I love a good fan theory, and maybe this is our next podcast could be all about fan theories, but
Our favorite fan theory.
yeah, like well, we've mentioned Frozen, so like, you know,
Our favorite,
the ship
our favorite
the ship that went down with the parents of the girls in Frozen became the ship that Ariel
Tangled.
and Little Mermaid
The Little Mermaid, yeah.
got her
And it's because her parents were on the way to the wedding for Rapunzel and Flynn.
right, and where she kept her thingamabobber or whatever like that.
There's a theory that they're also Tarzan's parents, which I say is completely like ridiculous because
Yeah.
like they
It's
wrong
bunk.
wrong clothes, wrong, like did not have a baby with them. Like none of it works. None
Yeah.
of it works. But
So I have another site called nerdatron.com. I don't know if I've shared this with y'all.
I've heard of that one.
Yes, you
Oh,
have.
okay. Well, good. But yeah, I have
this is your site,
yeah,
Yeah.
I have a
not just one you frequent.
yeah. Let's just move on. But I have a best fan theories post, and yeah. So we got is Dumbledore death? You know, the Deathly Hallows, and you know, the Pevensey, not Pevensey, that's Narnia. The Peverell brothers being the different. Those brothers being Snape, Harry, and Dumbledore, or Voldemort,
Yes,
and then Dumbledore's death.
Yeah.
That's a good one. But yeah, there's some, and then, you know, Gandalf saying "Fly, you fools," being a reference to, hey, why don't you just go straight to the Eagles now, go to Mordor, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like how it should have ended.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and it ended. But no.
That's one of the most intense fan theories I've ever read, is the whole fly you fools thing.
It is intense. Thanks for nerding out with us, the Catholic Nerds. We hope, well, I'm not going to say that again. We hope we have increased your nerdiness a bit. Please subscribe to this podcast and share it with all your Catholic nerd friends. This is where
Peace be with you.
Bum, 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 bum,